It's only been 2 weeks of the fantasy football season so far, but that doesn't mean it's too soon to go out and make a trade that could potentially alter the course of your fantasy team, take you over the top from being a contender to a champion. Let's look at 7 guys I think you need to try to go out and get on the cheap right now before they start going off in fantasy. And while you're out there making those trades, don't forget to get your pick'ems in for week 3. Underdog already has pick'ems live for week 3. And if you're new to Underdog and haven't tried it yet, they're also going to give you this Aaron Rodgers new customer special. He just needs 1 yard on Thursday Night Football. You take that pick, pair it with any other pick or picks you like, and that's an easy win right there. And if you join Underdog using promo code ENDGAME, not only are you going to get this Aaron Rodgers new customer special, but you're also going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Go to Underdog now, join using promo code ENDGAME, and take advantage of these offers. All right, and there's always a couple of huge names early in the season that you think will never be a buy low, and then they become a buy low. And let's start with Christian McCaffrey. The obvious reason why he's a buy low here is because he's not playing right now, and we don't know when he's coming back. Not to mention, we're hearing Achilles tendonitis. That is certainly scary. But look, if you can truly buy low on Christian McCaffrey, I think you should do it. I mean, this is one of those trades that, sure, maybe we don't see Christian McCaffrey this year. Maybe he comes back, re-aggravates it, and only gives you a game or two. But if he comes back healthy at some point this year and you are in contention and you get into the playoffs, this is a guy that unarguably could win you your fantasy championship. This is the kind of guy I want to gamble on with a buy low. Now, when I say buy low, I don't mean trade away a stud. I don't even mean trade away a very good player. I mean buy low by trying to take 2 solid players, startable players, for 1 elite player who could come back and potentially take you over the top. All right, so what do I mean by 2 startable, usable, solid players that you can go out and get for Christian McCaffrey? Well, let me show you. This is Fantasy Calc right here. They look at almost 3 million trades to get an accurate depiction of how redraft players are valuing these players right now. And so you can see here, I mean, Christian McCaffrey is still valued pretty high, but let me give you some names of players I'd be willing to package in a 2-for-1 to potentially go get Christian McCaffrey. So wide receivers like Stephon Diggs. I mean, he's fine, but we saw the other night, if he doesn't score, not going to give you a whole lot more than likely. Michael Pittman, not feeling great about his ceiling right now. T. Higgins, if somebody's willing to gamble on him coming back. George Pickens will be fine. Maybe people are still in on Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, any of these wide receivers. And then I'd be willing to package him with running backs like Rachaad White, who's still the starter there in Tampa Bay. Aaron Jones, still the starter in Minnesota. Montgomery, again, he's fine when he scores touchdowns, but not the greatest ceiling here. Najee Harris, if somebody's willing to take him. DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss. These are the kind of guys where I want to put them together in a package, in a 2-for-1, and go out and get Christian McCaffrey. If you can't, if somebody's going to ask for a stud in return, just don't do it. It's not worth the risk. Now, another stud who's seen his value drop, but not because he's injured, pretty much because his quarterback is injured, is Tyreek Hill. Of course, Tua out. We don't know how long he's going to be out for, but it doesn't sound like he has any plans of retiring. Sounds like he will be back at some point this season, but people are terrified because Tyreek Hill is probably going to have to play with Skylar Thompson for the next however many weeks. But when you look at Tyreek Hill without Tua since he's been with the Dolphins, he's still been really good. He's averaged 9.8 targets per game, 7 receptions per game, and 92 yards per game. No, those aren't jump off the page, top 3 fantasy pick type of numbers, but that'll get you by, until Tua comes back. So I'm going to say the same thing here. If you can go out and trade 2 solid, not great, not stud players, a 2-for-1 to get Tyreek Hill, I think he's worth the risk. All right, now let's get into some more not so obvious buy lows, I guess, and I got to start with Chris Olave here. No, it has not been a great start for Chris Olave, even though it's been an unbelievable start for the Saints. But look, all the worry for Chris Olave this year is like, oh, he's on the Saints offense and he has Derek Carr. Well, you don't have to worry about that anymore. This offense has been incredible, and like I said all offseason, they're running play action and pre-snap motion at the highest rate of any team right now. Sure, they're going to regress. They're not going to be this good all year. But any offense that runs this kind of style is going to be a fantasy goldmine, and eventually they're not just going to be able to throw it, 17, 20 times a game. They're going to have to throw it more. They're going to be in more competitive games, and that is going to be great for Chris Olave. Even when you look on Sunday, he only had 6 targets, but Derek Carr only attempted 16 passes. That is a massive target share. Buy the dip on Chris Olave right now before the Saints offense comes back down to earth a little bit, and they have to throw it to Chris Olave 8, 9, 10 times a game. Not to mention, he did get tackled at the 1-yard line, so could have been a much bigger day for him. There are much bigger days ahead for Chris Olave. You got to feel great about this offense and Chris Olave, but most people don't So let's go try to get him now. And again, looking at fantasy calc here, players, being valued slightly below him that I would be willing to give up that I think people might value more highly. Stephon Diggs, I would take Chris Olave. Probably Jalen Waddle, I would take over Chris Olave right now because I don't feel as good about Jalen Waddle without Tua. So just go ahead and give me Olave now. If people still believe in Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta like they're going to carry their teams at tight end, go get Chris Olave. Rachaad White, he'll be fine. But again, just give me Chris Olave. I think he has way more upside. And all the worries about this offense can be thrown out the window now. And then if you're looking for QB help, which a lot of people are right now, go try to buy low on Anthony Richardson. Coming off a very bad game. He hasn't looked great throwing the ball other than those 2 huge plays to Alec Pierce and Ashton Dulin in week 1. People are a little nervous, like, this guy can't throw. Oh my gosh. But you know what? Does it really matter for fantasy? This guy has a top 5 weekly ceiling every single week he's on the field because of that rushing ability. And this is another offense. They've kind of struggled out of the gate so far, but I think this offense is going to get better. I believe in Shane Steichen. I think he'll figure it out. And Anthony Richardson is going to be one of those QBs that you can just set and forget and will carry your team on most weeks. But right now, people are a little nervous about Anthony Richardson. And then you can see here on Fantasy Calc, Anthony Richardson ranked kind of just inside the top 50 players. But when we look at the players going like just outside the top 50, I mean, if I needed a quarterback and I was good at running back, I would trade Aaron Jones for Anthony Richardson, absolutely. And if somebody values Dak Prescott more than Anthony Richardson, just give me Anthony Richardson here. Again, like Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, tight ends, I mean, they're ranked a little lower, but if somebody needs a tight end and they think these guys are still going to be like elite stud options, just go get Anthony Richardson, set and forget at your QB position every week with top 5 upside. If you're looking for running back help, there's not a lot of buy low running backs right now because running backs have dominated this fantasy season so far, but go take a look at Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. Despite all the talk all offseason from head coach Brian Callahan that this would be a 50-50 split, it's been anything but. Through 2 games, Tony Pollard has 33 carries, 10 targets, and 8 receptions, and Tyjae Spears has hardly been involved. Not to mention, Tyjae Spears is a little banged up, although it sounds like he's going to be fine, but I don't think it matters. Tony Pollard is the RB1 here. He's getting the volume. No, he's not going to have like top 5 upside this year, probably top 10 upside, but as a high-end RB2, you could do much worse than Tony Pollard, and he really hasn't had a huge game yet, and I really don't feel like people are valuing him that high at this time yet, so now is a good time to go get him before he has a nice game and people wake up. And when you look here again, being ranked at 58 on Fantasy Calc, so like I said, people aren't that high on him. Again, I'm going to say if somebody like is desperate for a tight end and they still believe in Mark Andrews or Dalton Kincaid, go get Tony Pollard. Or if somebody is really desperate at QB and they'll take Dak Prescott for Tony Pollard, just give me Tony Pollard. Or moving down here a little bit, I mean, if somebody still believes in, T. Higgins coming back, or if you're, deep at wide receiver and you need running back help, George Pickens, I'd probably trade Xavier Worthy for Tony Pollard right now. Najee Harris in a 1-to-1. Look at those players. Go see if you can get Tony Pollard. I think he's going to be a high-end RB2 rest of the season. And then I think you really got to go out and try to get year 2 wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba right now, coming off a huge week 2 game. But people don't really believe, like, is this a real thing? Because remember, he was so bad as a rookie, so bad in week 1. But look, in week 2, led the team in targets. He's ran 92% of the routes so far. And this Seattle offense, another offense talked up all offseason, like, they're going to be vastly different. They're going to move guys around. They're going to use play action, and they have so far. They're using these guys in different ways. I mean, call DK Metcalf a league winner, but also call a JSN year 2 breakout. Now, I'm not ready to go out and say already, yeah, this is it. This is the year 2 breakout, but you got to be encouraged by what you saw in week 2. You got to think it's only going to continue here. I mean, Tyler Lockett is fine, but I mean, come on, this guy's old. I got to think this offense with Ryan Grubb is going to find ways to get JSN involved, especially after what we saw in week 2. So go out, get him now before he has another big week in week 3, and then it's too late. And again, looking at him here on Fantasy Calc, only ranked at 106. I mean, below guys like Dallas Goedert, Ezekiel Elliott, Cortland Sutton. I mean, give me JSN over all those guys. But even players going behind him. I mean, if somebody like has Kenneth Walker and they'll take Charbonnet right now for JSN, do it, because once Kenneth Walker comes back, Charbonnet just a handcuff. I doubt anybody's going to give you JSN for Deontay Johnson, but you never know. But maybe running backs like Austin Eckler, he's getting touches. He doesn't look terrible. Maybe a wide receiver like Jordan Addison coming back from injury. You never know. Go ahead, try it, see if you can get JSN. But I think this is the time you got to make the move for him before he has another nice game and people wake up to the fact that this could be a year 2 breakout. And then I have one more quarterback to recommend you go out and trade for, and that is Joe Burrow. Looked great on Sunday. No worries about the wrist or anything like that, but he still didn't have a huge game, and he still hasn't been great this year, nor has the Bengals offense. So people still a little worried about Joe Burrow. Don't believe in him, but you should buy into Joe Burrow, and this is a great time because he gets the Commanders, Panthers, Giants, and Eagles in 4 of his next 5 games. He could have huge games in all of those. Plus, I'm sure at some point we're going to see T. Higgins back. So if you need a quarterback and maybe Anthony Richardson is out of reach for you or you don't want to pay up for him, Joe Burrow, you can get him relatively cheap for a potential elite QB. All right, you see here on Fantasy Calc, Joe Burrow ranked player 60. And again, you see right behind him, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, ranked almost the same. If the person in your league with Joe Burrow needs a tight end and maybe they already have another QB, Joe Burrow's just on their bench, go see if one of those tight ends can get you Joe Burrow. Also moving down a little bit here, I mean, look, I like T. Higgins still. I like Xavier Worthy still. But if you're deep at wide receiver and you're struggling at QB, I think it's okay to go get Joe Burrow. Same with a running back like Najee Harris. Running backs like DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss. I mean, if the person in your league is struggling at running back and just needs some points, and again, Joe Burrow's just sitting on their bench, go see if those players can get you Joe Burrow. And now I do want to talk about a couple players that are kind of like on my watch list. I don't think now is the time to trade for them, but certainly maybe next week they're going to be on this video. And let's start with Jayden Reed. Had a very terrible week 2, but look, it's going to be like this until Jordan Love comes back. We're hearing that they're eyeing a week 5 return. So I don't want to trade for Jayden Reed right now because you're going to have to struggle through probably another bad week 3 and then another bad week 4. But if he does have another bad week 3 going into week 4, that is going to be a great time to trade for Jayden Reed because then you only got to deal with one potentially Malik Willis start before Jordan Love comes back. And then I'm going to urge you not to drop Javonte Williams. And if Javonte Williams does get dropped in your league, I'm going to say go pick him up. But I also think he's going to be a buy low candidate potentially within the next couple weeks. Now, he does get the Bucs and the Jets the next 2 weeks. That's not great. But then he gets the Panthers, Raiders, and Chargers in 3 of the next 4 after that. And when you look at it this week, his snaps went from 52% to 63%, and he had 16 of the 21 running back opportunities. I still believe he's going to take over this backfield. Now, it's not going to be the most fantasy-friendly backfield, but look, in those kind of matchups, he's going to be an upside RB2. He's going to get the volume. I think he's going to get better. I think the offense could get better. But again, if he gets dropped, go ahead and stash him. But I think going into next week, he might be a potentially good buy low candidate. So there you go. There are some trades that could help your fantasy team going forward, but we got everything else you need to help your fantasy team as well. Check out our week 3 playlist right here where you can find start sits, booms, panic, waiver wire. Everything you need in week 3 is right here.